Good evening, everybody. How are you doing, Mr. Reel?
I'm doing so good, RFM. How are you?
I can always get an easy laugh out of you at the top of every show. All I do is look in the opposite direction from where you are on the screen and say, how are you doing, Bill? And you start laughing.
And then the Holy Ghost compels me to look at the opposite direction than where you're actually at and to play along. So I love it. Welcome to Mormonism Live, everybody. RFM, life is treating you good?
Better than I deserve, I'll tell you that.
Love it. Well, I love it.
I understand that there's been a class action filed against the church yesterday.
Yeah, you know, you did a TikTok a while back where you said this SEC thing that happens, like, wouldn't it be interesting if somebody filed a lawsuit and because the church intentionally hid the financial information because they admitted, because they feared that tithing would go down and decrease, that now people could come forward in a class action lawsuit and sue the church, saying that had they known the church's financial information, they wouldn't have paid tithing. And strangely enough, RFM, your prophecy seems to be coming true.
Well, it was pretty obvious, even to a lowbrow like me.
Yeah.
But
well,
yeah, and that
was brilliant.
That TikTok went crazy. It's on the cusp of 150,000 views. People were really intrigued by the idea of suing the church about their tithing.
I think you should put it out again, but this time with the face page, the front page of that lawsuit, and then maybe a follow-up after you show that page, and then say, seems like it's starting to come to pass. And it came to pass.
Humility forbids me to act in such a way.
Yeah.
But I do hope to make time tomorrow to review the lawsuit at Radio Free Mormon.
I love it. I love it. Folks, we have a special episode for you tonight. We are going to interview Kody Brown from Sister Wives. I just want to note, folks, if you're new to the channel, we would love it if you're interested in all things Mormonism. If you want to subscribe to our channel, if you want to like this video, leave your comments. We'll certainly see those as the show is going. And we also take live calls at the end. We're going to ask that those calls be respectful and polite, but we would welcome a few phone calls at the end to ask Kody questions. And just a little thing off the top, we won't be discussing, and in fact, maybe I should just bring Kody on and let him sort of name this. So give me a second.
And here's Kody Brown.
Kody, how are you?
Blessings.
Excellent.
Peace be unto you.
Peace, glad to see you, my friend.
You.
I wanted to give you a moment to kind of state the areas we won't be going into tonight, and then we'll start asking some really good questions and get to know you a lot better.
Yeah, I won't do any TLC spoilers. I'll discuss even that altogether very little, and I'll talk more to my experiences as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and then my experiences as a fundamentalist Mormon outside of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah, I love that, and we're super grateful that you gave us some time today. And you and I know each other a little bit. We have a common friend, and I've had the chance to rub elbows with you, and just grateful for the chance to get to know you and for our audience to get to know you better. So super excited to, oops, I think he bumped a button again. Here we go.
Oh,
there we go. Let's try that.
See that?
Yeah, we did.
Oh yeah.
Bill, my daughter worked for you. She considered you her direct manager when she worked years ago. And she had a pleasant experience with you.
Together.
So
I love it.
Compliments to you.
Yeah, I want to start off, Kody, just talking a little bit about, you're a reality, you're on a reality TV show, and I can't imagine putting your personal life up in front of cameras. And so, when you guys are filming, you're just living your life, and the cameras are following you around and filming you. Maybe talk for a moment about how difficult it is to have you and your family in front of cameras, and how that plays out, what that does to a group of folks, good and bad, I'm sure.
Well, the desired effect almost happened. And to be fair, it actually did happen. So, holy cow. In 2007, the story starts out like this. I stepped on a stage in a demo reel for a talk show in New York City with my seven oldest children and 3 wives that I had at that time. And I just felt like there was an experience when I stepped on that stage to basically tell people about my life. It was as simple as this. I felt a sort of a sense of a calling. I felt like, in absolute terms, this is what I'm supposed to do. It was a weird experience because I didn't know. And 2 years later, I found myself in a reality show. And when I was trying to work to those ends with my family, I thought, had agreed as a family, and I believe this still, that we had agreed as a family, even our kids, that in order to get a fair shake as a polygamist family, we would have to allow people into our homes. We met a documentary filmmaker. He said he wanted to do a documentary, and I said, no way, man. If you can't farm us out to a network where we're going to be, every Wednesday night on television, we ended up being in Sunday night, which is their big night. If we can't be there every night, let those people into our home and see us in our real and raw way, we'll never get their trust. My goal from the beginning was to free Mormon fundamentalists or polygamists in general to be able to live their lifestyle without the government or social ostracization or rejection or affecting their lives. And it was a long time. There were other people involved, other people who helped us along this trail, other people who I think did as much as we did, just not as publicly. Maybe there were people out there who did more than we did. And eventually, for the state of Utah, polygamy was decriminalized, which was our goal, our partial goal. I actually had a desire that the polygamy would eventually be legalized. And years ago, maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I started talking about legitimacy. I had a feeling that if a plural wife had legal rights to her husband the same way that a first wife did in marriage and stuff like that, that it would kind of clean up some of the messes that were being created in some of the sects with underage marriage, or even with some of the problems that they had. And, that was probably a naive place. There's a very common statement in Mormon fundamentalism. When I was young, I had a lot of theories and no experience. Now that I'm old, I have no theories and a lot of experience.
Yeah.
And so we accomplished part of the goal by decriminalizing plural marriage in Utah and kind of making it okay for fundamentalist Mormons or people in plural marriage to live more openly in that lifestyle. And that was our goal.
But in the process of that, you're putting your conflict. Anytime, again, I have arguments with my wife. I have arguments with my children. You put your conflict in front of the cameras. You put your embarrassing moments in front of the camera. You put the moments that you regret in front of the camera. Like, I wish I wouldn't have behaved this way, or I wish I wouldn't have said that. Like, how hard is it to do that in front of cameras where millions of people are watching?
In the beginning, I was a little bit, I had a smile on my face and was goofing off a lot. I was just trying to have fun with my family.
Yeah.
Eventually, you have to just get serious about what's happening and the struggle that's happening. And certainly reality TV doesn't work if it's all Pollyanna. And it boiled down to where there was a lot of conflict. And then it eventually became a point where what we're portraying on the show is almost perpetually conflict. Conflict is the essence of literature. If you don't have, I think I learned in literature, English lit, that it was conflict between man and conflict between nature. Those are your two conflicts, whatever. And our conflict between man versus man, was necessary, or it was in the beginning, it was man versus society. Like, our family was sort of taking on society, asking, begging, please, would you please give us recognition, or at least acceptance, and then and tolerance. But then eventually the conflict became the conflict between us, and that makes great television.
It had to be hard, though.
It's hard on my heart. The experience altogether has been heartbreaking, very, very challenging.
Kody, what was it that happened last week that came to your mind when Bill asked you that question?
Tell me again, the last week when you say that question.
Bill had mentioned
Remind
something
me.
about how, are there ever any times where it's got to be hard, you know, when you're doing all these things and embarrassing things you wish you hadn't said or done in front of the camera. And then you said just last week.
Oh yeah. Oh no, last week. Not sorry. I thought you meant when I was talking with Bill. No, just like every time I work, I'm in front of a camera, and it'd be like once and twice in an episode I'd do something I felt like was a little embarrassing. Sometimes it was quaint and cute even, or whatever, but then it got to the point where I was doing something embarrassing that I was totally ashamed of. I'm still a man of faith, and so my prayers recently have been for Heavenly Father to help me stop doing things that I feel shame about. Because my habit, and the reason I think I've had a successful TV show, is because the habit of the family has been to be frank and honest. And we cross lines. And so it's like, if I don't like something, there's a tendency for me to almost feel like I've got Tourette's, where I'll say something that's just out of line because it triggers me. And frankly, I'm pretty sure this is my rationalization, is it probably makes good television, but it's actually heartbreaking. And whether I'm lashing out at the question of a fan, or I'm lashing out at the behavior or interpreted behavior of a family member, or whether if I watch an episode, when our first 5 years, I watched the episodes with a smile on my face, even if I did something embarrassing. Now I almost cannot bear to watch the episodes without getting physically ill. And so it's become overall a very sad experience.
Kody, you've been living all this out for, I think, 14 years now in public with you, your family, your wives, your children. Is there anything that's happened with your relationships with any of your family that has been caused or exacerbated, you think, by the presence of the film crew that might otherwise not have been so bad?
I wouldn't say the presence. Well, yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with our producer, and he has a great talent for antagonizing me, almost like a brother, you know. And we had years where we were just deeply loyal to each other, but we would fight like family members. And there was the effect of that because he was under pressure. He was under a lot of pressure, and as a result, that pressure would roll down onto me. And so he'd be like, I need your family to do this. I need your family to do that. And I was like, this isn't scripted. My family's just going to do whatever we want. So those were challenging experiences. But in the long run, the real issue was that we were having an experience. Let's say me and a wife would have an experience, or even me and one of my kids would have an experience that's being filmed, and then we'd have to talk about it later, and then we'd have to talk about it again, and then again, and then it'd be used as either potentially a rerun or a flashback or something like that. And something that you would probably forget was said and that happened was in your face 4 or 5 times and put it into your memory. And as a result, led to possibly some challenges. And so in the end, there's been a lot that has happened, and some of it has been successful and some of it has been very, very sad. And I lay the blame, sorry, I don't want to go down this road. The wise man, the fool blames everybody else. The wise man blames himself. And the stoic says there's nothing to blame. It just is what happened. Mm. And I want to be stoic, but there's a lot of blame to be laid at my own feet about what has happened. And I think it's just a natural course of events. And where I thought we were doing so much benefit for plural marriage, we may have, in the end, done harm.
In what way?
well, I don't want to go into any spoilers, but the lifestyle my sister once told me, she's never been on the show. She is in plural marriage. And she told me once in the beginning, she said, the problem with your show is, Kody, is you make it look easy, and it's not. Well, it doesn't look easy now.
Yeah, that was in the beginning, right?
Yeah, it was.
For those in our audience who don't know your current situation, would you mind explaining it to everybody?
If they're watching the season now, which we are currently airing Sunday nights, I apologize, on TLC I don't know the time, because it depends on your cable network. But Sunday nights on TLC, we are airing, and the experience is very dramatic. And the family is not functioning together any longer, not the whole family. So we have segmented or split stories.
Yeah.
And so I film, or you'll see me talk with the wife, and it's kind of about our breakup, and this has been ongoing. So I'm not giving any spoilers, but I'd rather let's get back to where we're not doing spoilers. Totally. or even
totally.
I don't want to walk that thin line about
totally.
Spoilers. I have a job to do.
Yep. So you've been on for 18 seasons. RFM pointed out 14 years. That's a long time. It's a long spot of life to be on TV and to do a show. I mean, it's longer lasting than 99% of the TV shows that have ever aired on television, right?
How long was MASH on television? It was my favorite show.
I have no idea.
I think it was less than yours.
Yeah.
I think it was maybe
10
11, possibly.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. It's a long time, but there's just this thing this factor that is in it is we were in a very dramatic family. I'm a very dramatic person. I have other dramatic family members, had other dramatic family members. And I think that sometimes it was interesting and sometimes it wasn't. And then we had people who just tuned in because they thought it was fun to watch. And I just had a contractor at my house talking about doing some repair work on my electricity that has gotten funny. And he watches the show. And I'm like, oh, gosh. He says, I know you, though, so I'm not holding any grudges. But on the other hand, I had one of my close friends text me. She was a close friend that I worked with when we lived in Utah, and she texted me, and she sends me a book. And at the bottom of the book, she says, get your shit together. So can I say that word on this show?
You say anything you want.
Oh, I can. Well, I'll be careful. Yeah. Anyway, and I'm like, I have to text back to her, like, very patiently to say, you're seeing a portion, a teeny segment of my life, and you're usually seeing the most dramatic points. And I made the mistake once when my family was going through a partial breakup of yelling at or not yelling, but saying to my wives, well, I'm bringing back patriarchy. I'm going to be in charge, and you guys are going to do what I say. And I have a sister who's LDS, and it was the one scene in all 13 years of me being public, one scene that she saw. And at Christmas time, we were visiting, and she was chastising me for saying that. And I had to stand up and pace the room so I wouldn't lose it, that she had been not loyal enough to ever check into the show, but then she chastises me for the one worst day of my life. Yeah. And that's kind of one of the hard things about it is people are going to see you and judge you in many cases by the worst day of your life. And if it keeps people sober about plural marriage and polygamy, good, because I do not want this to look easy, because it's not. And people who have very, very powerfully convicted faith are the only people who should do this. And I'm telling you, the end result of where we're at now with this struggle in plural marriage is the real reality of the struggle in plural marriage. And we weren't strong enough to manage it. That sacred, you guys have heard the book, Sacred Loneliness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, sacred loneliness is a real thing. And And there's a point where you might lose enough faith to go, I don't want to spend the rest of my life in this kind of pain. And if God cannot manifest to me that this is the best thing for me, then I want out, because it's that hard.
I do wonder. Oh, go ahead, RFM.
I was just going to say, what is it that has caused the pain for you? And are you saying that you feel like you've experienced personally the sacred loneliness that causes so much pain?
Well, listen, I'm not going to claim that I suffer the sacred loneliness. The Sacred Loneliness is a book referring to women in the 1800s who lived plural marriage. And there's some journal, I think it's Parley P. Pratt's wife is Yeah, I think I don't have all my facts straight. I apologize.
You're the polygamy expert here.
No, I am not. So, you guys in your research gets more information about polygamy. I'm only an experienced polygamist who has no theories any longer. Parley P. Pratt's had a wife who was, I think he was out on a honeymoon or something, and she's pacing and writing in this journal about this destructive heartbreak. And there came a point where one of my wives, I wanted to put all my wives in one home. And we had a big design done. It cost me thousands of dollars to have this design done. Beautiful home, 16,000 square feet, I think. And I don't remember all the details, but I had a wife who said, there's no way I'm ever going to live in that home as this family. And it sort of broke down plural marriage for me. And so there's kind of a couple of theories. Plural marriage, the Plig Barn theory, I think there's a little town south of St. George, and it's got a home of, I've forgotten more Mormon history than most Mormons will ever know. And he had 4 wives in one home. Bill,
is it down in Ivins, maybe like William Hamlin, the William Hamlin home? Mm-hmm.
Yes, the William Hamlin home, and he, and he had wives in that home, and that's the plural marriage I wanted, where if I come home from work, I see all my children every night, unless I'm out of town or gone on a trip with a wife and her children or something. And I think plural marriage is much easier for women when they don't see their husband around that other woman so much, where they got 4 homes, maybe a mile apart from each other, rather than 4 homes in front of each other or one home. And when I did this design of the one home and I presented it to my family, I had a wife reject that. And I started to dig into why. And I realized that in some ways my family was in the way of my goals in plural marriage. And I got kind of, I got dark and cynical, because I discovered that I was never going to be able to live plural marriage the way I wanted to live it. And I stopped believing that they were happy. My wives were happy in plural marriage. Now, I'd had family counselors and therapists who sit down with me and say, hey, listen, your family's not going to be happier out of this family, or your wives won't be happier out of this family than they are in it. But I began to not believe that either. So the family counselor, who's a contemporary monogamist, was saying your family will not be, or your wives will not be happier outside of this marriage than they are in it, which was good to know, but I didn't believe it. And so
I'm having trouble believing it too. Because it sounds like what you're saying is that this counselor is saying that your wives will be as happy in a plural marriage relationship as they would be outside of it.
Together. She is saying, so just to clarify, she was saying that my wives would be as happy as they can be in the plural marriage that we had built as a family than they would be outside of it. In other words, if I was questioning the fairness of plural marriage. Obviously, it seems there's a dichotomy of contradictions in plural marriage, and you have to be able to endure those contradictions. And I found myself a little bit cynical, unable to endure those contradictions anymore, because I had a wife that was extremely unhappy, and I had another wife that I wasn't in love with. And so that was making us in the marriage extremely unhappy. It's a tough place to be. And, if you believe the Pearl of Great Price, where it says, when I saw the noble and great ones, and there were many of them, and as long as there was one energy, there was another entity that was more powerful than them, or greater. Greater is the word used in the Pearl of Great Price. And so there's just this, there's a challenge that you cannot relax in, that says you have to be better all the time, better and better and better. And I think that's really been detrimental to a lot of people who are LDS in any way, is this, I have to be perfect. If I have to be perfect, then why did the Savior suffer on the cross? He was perfect. I don't have to be. But in Mormonism, there's all this pressure to be perfect. And even Jesus says it, be ye therefore perfect, even as I and your heavenly Father are perfect.
Matthew 5:48.
Yeah. I want to ask a couple questions about polygamy, and I'm really speaking generally. I don't need you to get into the specifics necessarily of your family dynamic, but it occurs to me that, like in your situation where you live like on a cul-de-sac and you've got all of your family there, it seems to me that as one husband is splitting his time among multiple wives, that inevitably what I think would happen, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I think would happen is that those women would perceive that they get a limited amount of time with you, that they have to put on their best face. They don't want to be overly critical. They don't want to be the wife that nags. They don't want to be the wife that's looked at by everyone as being the one who's causing any sort of trouble. So they will feel a lot of pressure to put on the best appearance for the day that they've got you, and in their communication with the rest of the family. And I imagine that the husband, and no knock on any of you guys, like this religious system commands you to do this, and you did it. But the other side of it is that for the man who is getting his time split up among all of these women, it seems as though there is some room to maybe not, at least especially as you said, like in the early parts, not be criticized. You almost get the best version, the happiest version of each of these women. And I'm just curious, like how that dynamic plays out.
It just doesn't work. They sooner or later they're going to explode. Everybody gets in a bad place. And ironically, there's a woman who shares her husband has given so much that in the path to perfection, sometimes she might feel like that's enough. I felt like I was constantly doing this dance where I was like, hey, are you okay? Are you happy? I want you to be happy. I'm just trying to make everybody happy all the time. And it's kind of like running around all the time, trying to keep everybody happy. And that was my job. And their job wasn't to keep me happy, even though, as a smart woman, that's going to work better for you. But they felt like they had given enough. And so there was always, I don't remember a time where I don't remember a very long time when all of my wives seemed like they were happy at the same time. Somebody was always off. And out of the five of us, somebody was always off, me or one of my wives. Sometimes two were off. Sometimes we were all a little off, but seldom were we all doing fantastic. And it was a big deal. The family, this big family picture, I think gave us all a lot of the sense of accomplishment. We felt special. We worked together to be special, but there were always undertones of a struggle that was really hard. And so I understand it. And this is why I struggle with my religion. I sometimes, my brothers have a podcast they do, and they call our church Cult Light because there's just no way that you feel like that this is healthy sometimes. And the requirement almost feels like beyond what people can accomplish. Now, that's me in it having struggled so much. It's hard to look at polygamy and see people that are happy. It really is.
Yeah, I think that's the crux of it, is that it's a really hard lifestyle to live, and that it's really difficult on everyone, to the effect that it is a sacred loneliness if you believe in it.
If you believe it by faith, I had a friend one time when I was complaining about the struggles, this disparity in polygamy, and I'm like, listen, this disparity in fairness in plural marriage is just too much. And he said, no. He's a former polygamist, and he would be still if he hadn't had a wife leave. He said, there is no disparity in fairness if there's not a disparity in choice. In other words, if that woman can choose to be in your family or out of your family, then there's no disparity. She chooses to be part of a plural family, or she chooses not to be. Now, the problem is when you're choosing to be part of a plural family, you're usually young, you might not have children, you don't even know what it's like to live with that other woman.
You don't even know who you are, and you don't even know who the people you're entering this group relationship with are. I mean,
who knows let's not count how many times any of us have been divorced, but anybody who's been divorced just goes, wait, I just didn't know that person, or they changed. And, you when you're courting and you're dating somebody, it is absolutely best foot forward. And my family got beautifully lucky for first few years of our TV show, because we were putting our best foot forward. We were trying really hard to be a good plural family. And it was a good honeymoon experience because we worked hard to do it. But there's always the undertones. And here's the thing, when you're in a marriage, and it's good marriage, you can mess up and you'll forgive each other. You got a husband and wife just going, yeah, we love each other. So baby, I'm sorry I did that, and I forgive you, and that works. The minute you divorce, or you're getting divorced, or you're looking for a reason to divorce, you forget to cover that sin with charity. And all of a sudden you want to tell everybody. And so what'll happen is when a couple divorce, they might have looked like they had a great marriage before, but once they're divorced, they're both telling you how awful the other person was, because they're no longer willing to cover each other's mistakes with a cloak of charity. And that's kind of the world I live in right now. And so it's retrospectively, there is a struggle and a place where you're like, wow, this was an experiment. And when I talk about cult light, nobody in plural marriage who's struggling tells you to be careful here or there. I married 3 women that I courted for 4 months, 5 months or less. I knew them maybe longer than that, but as far as a courtship, one courtship was for 5 months. One courtship was for 1 month, and another courtship I think was for 2 months. My 4th wife, we courted for 10 months, but nobody in our church told us kind of what we were getting into. So that's why I'm thinking kind of culty thought processes, because there were tons of people who were either in the process of failing in plural marriage or had failed in it, who were still promoting it in our church. But our church's main focus was probably plural marriage. I wish that it would have been more Christ-centered, but it really seemed to be sort of plural marriage centered and then prophet centered. We'd have these leaders, and like there was a couple of them that I don't think had anything but a spiritual disposition. They were not prophets by any means, and they were being quoted as though they were second to God, and just discrepancies.
Kody, can I ask you a question and get your take on it? You're
RFM?
a man.
You want to ask me a question? Come on, buddy. Ask it. I'm messing.
Oh, I'll have a few more later, but you've raised this one in my mind by what you said, which is you're a man now who has lots of experience, very little theories. And the way you're describing your situation, what I'm taking from it is that you have done what you believed in your heart was something that you were supposed to do, that you have done everything you could to make it work. It has not worked, if I can just summarize it in that way, not in the way that you had hoped it would. Yeah, sure. I haven't quite got to my question, but hopefully I'll remember it. Go ahead.
I know for a fact that I did not do all I possibly could.
Are you under an illusion that if you'd done more,
the
circumstances now would be different?
It's tough to say, because I had a recent discussion with my wife, and I said, if we wouldn't have had this breakup happen over this past 3 years, it would be starting today. That's still very cynical, but I do know that if I had done things different, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, possibly, but you know what? I don't know. And to be really honest with you, I don't know the answer, because I had a goal to have the family in the plig barn. That's a joke. In the one home theory, or the cul-de-sac theory, where the homes are close together. And I think that might have been part of the problem, is like, if I get Mark Twain once made a joke about Brigham Young and all of his wives. And he said, the minute he buys one wife a brooch, he has to buy 40 of them. Or I think at that time, Brigham Young was admitting to 18 wives or something. He has to buy 17 more. He's like, he can't do anything without having the jealousy roll through. And Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens, was very astute. He was very wise about this idea. Brigham Young was a genius about how he managed it, but he was a tyrant and a king. Samuel Clemens saw it and went, how does this work? This has got to be impossible. So I'm sorry that I interjected that, but finish your question and get to your point.
That comment plays into the second part of my question, which is that the way you're describing it, it does seem impossible. It does seem beyond human ability to make a success out of this polygamous relationship. And I'm wondering, is that where you have come down as of this point in your life, that it is something that really is mission impossible? Or do you still think that if it were done differently or in some other way, that it could be a success?
I know minimum of 5 men right now who are still very successful at it. They're around my age, maybe a little bit younger, so there's still time for a failure. But they're doing a good job with it. Their family is still whole. They just have enough faith in the, let's say, Section 132 of the Doctrine and Covenants. They have enough belief in that their faith in God and the principle of plural marriage is sustaining them through the difficulty. That's still supposition. I don't know, but I know people who are successful at it, and I've known polygamists who are successful at it until their death. My dad's family was not necessarily happy, but my dad died with 3 wives. But he didn't start his polygamy until he was nearly my age. I
guess that there was some time ago at the beginning of the TV program, when other people would have looked at you and thought that you were a success. And you may have thought you were a success yourself at the time.
Oh, I thought I was a total success. I have a diesel jeans model coming into my family in 2010. And I thought that was the biggest validation. She had other people in our church interested in her. She had offers from other people to marry her. And she absolutely believed in plural marriage, and she absolutely believed in me. She believed in our faith, and she came into our family with great hopes that in her mind now, I don't want to speak for her because she's not here and I don't want her to have to be interviewed, but I believe that she feels like she was naive. She's almost embarrassed by how naive she was when she came in our family. No, she's not opposed to the lifestyle. She always pushed me to fix things. I had a wife who kicked me out of the house, and she says, "You go sleep on that couch. You get in her face. You tell her you love her. You get back with it." I'm like, "I'm not doing that. That's the walk of shame." I'm like, she can ask me to come back. And she was always supportive of the relationship. She wanted me to push to have it go through, but she wasn't ready to see it dissolve. And I think I just came to a point where I was like cynical enough to go, this is going. I came to the point where I felt like the lifestyle was going to kill me.
Yeah. I'm just curious, if you had to do it all over again, would you do polygamy all over again? Or was it so detrimental to whatever that you would go like, man, if I do it over again, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't touch polygamy with a 10-foot pole?
Listen, I got these beautiful kids out of this situation, I mean, I can't help. Here's the thing. I was going through some dark times in the past 3 years, as our family began to unravel, and I was going, yeah, I wish I'd never done this. But you go a little bit farther into it and you're like, wait a second, if I'd never done this, I wouldn't have her, I wouldn't have them, I wouldn't have him, my kids. That's an impossible question, and it's a paradox. And I think plural marriage is a paradox because, listen, if you were to ask me, is plural marriage or polygamy good for society? I'm going to tell you, it has to be. And because you're never going to stop it. And the reason you're never going to stop it is because there's two things going on. Men are polygynists. We want to have one more woman, no matter how programmed we are for monogamy. And women are, what's the word? It's a word that's slipping my mind, where she wants a better man than the man she's got. You guys would know the word. And so they're looking for a better man. And so you're always going, as long as you have hypergamy, that's the word. As long as you have polygamy, you'll have hypergamy. And as long as you have hypergamy, you're going to have polygamy.
I didn't know
the word hypergamy.
We learned something tonight.
And I don't want to get into this because it's a very sexist word. But, everybody makes jokes about men and their wandering eyes. Everybody makes a joke about that. And the strongest monogamists still go, ooh, hubba hubba, when a good looking woman goes by. There's still a biological nature, and it's all been proven out, as far as I can tell accurately, by modern evolutionary psychology.
There's certainly truth to that. Yeah.
As long as there's a woman out here who wants this married man is going to want polygamy. I can't get away from it there because nature endorses it. And I'm not going against the book, the Doctrine and Covenants in section 132. I've had 3 years of hell as I've unraveled my polygamy, but I still support those people trying to do it. And but I think the one crazy thing is you have to enter it in freedom, in choice, and with wisdom. And there's a lot of pressure from religion to make you feel like, hey, I've got to do this or that.
That's what I wanted to ask you, Kody. That's what I wanted to ask you, because that's the overlay. And I know Bill has a question he got from a listener that he'll approach you about when he thinks the time is right. But this whole idea about the freedom to choose, do I understand it correctly that the religious belief based on 132, and it was in early Mormonism, it isn't anymore. And I mean that in the official Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints,
exactly.
With Russell M. Nelson being the president, that church.
Prophet, seer, and revelator too, RFM.
Oh, yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Do you believe, or have you believed, that entering into a polygamous relationship for the man and the women is something that is necessary for exaltation? And if so, does that enter into the equation of affecting the freedom of choice of those involved?
Okay, so let's go back to this. You have to determine with that whether or not Joseph Smith was a prophet or Brigham Young or whoever invented, because there's some theories out there that it wasn't even Joseph Smith who
we're crystal clear on those other theories. So
okay. So let's go back and let's just assume that Joseph Smith actually verbally repeated over and over section 132, and he had this magnificent experience and that it actually happened. And I'm not saying it didn't. I'm saying I wasn't there and I don't know. And there's so many people who are part of a faith And I was part of a faith that for me, in so many ways, was fabulous and wonderful. And it brought me to this point that I'm now with all these beautiful children, with all this life experience that if I look back on with the right attitude, I'm really glad I did this with the right attitude. But you're talking to a guy who's been humbled through 3 years of hell and now has gone, oh gosh, you know what? This was hard, this 3 years, but man, didn't we do something really cool? So, no, I'm not going on Section 132. I'm not going on Joseph Smith about plural marriage. I'm saying nature backs this, and I don't want to get weird about it. And maybe Christianity backs only monogamy, and I can support that. The issue for any of these relationships, for any relationship, I think in society is choice. I'm talking to you guys because I chose to. Bill, you and I are buddies because we choose to be, or we're not buddies because we don't choose to be. Husband and wife get married, and our culture, modern Christian America, from sometime around 17 whatever, or Plymouth Rock, 16 whatever, we've been this monogamous culture that says a husband and wife. Well, you know what really sucks is if you marry the wrong person and you can't get out of that mess. Or if you marry the right person, they change drastically and you can't get out of that mess. Modern society right now, men and women can make the same amount of money. You don't need to be behind a plow, so you don't need a lot of muscle to be very, very successful in modern society. So men and women, sadly, don't need each other. Considering myself still Christian with an open mind, I'm like going, yeah, Jesus says the man isn't without the woman, the woman isn't without the man, but having been divorced, I'm like going, wow, I wouldn't want to keep that woman in this mess with me, and I sure as hell don't want to be in that mess with her.
Yeah, 1 Corinthians 11:11. But by the way, Kody, am I sensing from you that you are somewhat ambivalent now on whether you believe Section 132 was actually a revelation to Joseph Smith from God?
I wasn't there.
That sounds ambivalent.
And it is ambivalence. I got so many friends that are LDS and very devoted to it. I have more friends who are ex-LDS and have a lot of criticism for it. And I'm going, you know what? Pick your medicine, because these things, if they lead you to enlightenment and blessings, and I got a dear friend who would have been a piece of doo-doo if he wouldn't have been just buried in Mormonism. Mormonism gave him so much goodness. And I have the deepest respect for him, what he's done with his family and everything. But I'm convinced it is because he chose to be a good Mormon, a good Latter-day Saint, and so I'm like, what ends well, all is well that ends well. And, there might be people going to their grave and it's just a dirt nap and well, they're not even going to be surprised because they won't care if they're not resurrected. But I almost it's not Occam's razor, it's Pascal's wager. Pascal's wager says, was my life good being a good, honest Christian and living the gospel? Yeah. So I'd rather live the gospel at the risk that it's all a lie and have this great gospel-oriented life than to not. And so I look at it, and I've been through some fires, emotionally and stuff like that. And I don't like the pressure that is put on by church leaders and by church neighbors. God, nothing worse than having a good Latter-day Saint as your neighbor if you're a mediocre Latter-day Saint. It's just hell, constant judgment. Or being a good fundamentalist Mormon trying to keep your family together while you're being judged by another better than you Mormon fundamentalist. The pressure from the culture comes in so much that it doesn't seem very redeeming. And I'd rather just hang my hat on the Messiah, Jesus, and go, hey, salvation through Jesus Christ. And I think a lot of Mormon fundamentalists would say, well, that's the easy way out. I'm like, whatever, dude. I'm broken. I'm a broken person, and I need a Messiah.
That's what Jesus said. that this is supposed to be the easy way out. Take upon you my yoke, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I thought that was what Jesus said.
Dude, you know what? You're convincing me. You know, but
Can I ask one more question, Bill?
Go ahead.
I apologize.
If I answer that question right, then keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, Kody. I talked to you on the phone for approaching an hour last Monday because I like to talk to guests before they come on the show. I'd never spoken with you. I'd certainly seen the program a couple of times, so I'm far from being an expert on the series. And you'd never heard of me, but you went out of your way in your busy schedule to text back and forth. And you remember what happened. I'm just letting the audience know. And it wouldn't work in the morning.
Notes, like the
and it was till the afternoon. And then, I called and then you said 10 more minutes, but you were very responsive. Oh, I remember you texted me in the morning and saying that you were going to be working on the television set that day. And then I texted you back and said, I think that when you say you're working on the television set, it means something different than if I said it. And so we finally contacted with each other. We had this very nice, pleasant conversation. You were very engaging. And I bring up all this background material. You don't know me, but out of respect for your time, I at least 3 times tried to terminate that phone conversation. You must have been aware of that. And yet you kept going. Now, it wasn't just you talking about yourself. I mentioned something about my family.
You had something to share.
And my daughter who doesn't speak to me.
Yeah.
And my daughter who doesn't speak to me. Also talked about, I know that you're going through a rough patch because I read People magazine online about the fact that you're down to 1 wife, apparently, and that the other 3 have flown the coop or whatever it is they've done in the last 3 years or so. And you're down to Robyn with a Y, and she's the most recent of your wives. And so you've been through, I think you said 3 divorces in 3 years. And I said, yeah, I've been through, 2 divorces and a failed engagement as well. But you expressed an interest in what I had to say. And I kept trying to stop it because the story kept becoming more and more elaborate. And I was aware of this fact.
I remember you kept going, oh gosh, there's more. This needs more background. Hold on.
I know. It needs more background. Otherwise you can't understand it.
Give you more background. Oh, sorry, not beer. Hold my soda. Go.
But my experience with you, and by the way, and then finally when you got off the call, it was because you said you had to go to a meeting, and I realized that you had given me all the time that you had between this engagement and this engagement. And I just thought, what a nice fellow. And now I'm becoming aware of the fact that you seem to be a lightning rod for negative criticism, if there's such a thing as positive criticism, but very, very negative comments from a myriad of people. And I'm a little bit at a loss, but that's because I don't know. Do you know why that is? Why do you think that is?
I know exactly why that is. The only way I had credibility when I came out public as a polygamist was because my wives were backing me up, saying I was a great guy and that we were worth it together as a family and that I was a good father and husband, yada, yada, yada. All my sins were covered by a cloak of charity from these ladies. When they left or I left or whatever, our breakup happened. Now, all of a sudden, we no longer cover each other's sins with a cloak of charity. And my public persona has become what I would consider personally that I'm the heel of the show. Unfairly, I think Robyn, my current wife, my only wife now, has become the heel of the show also because of for the same reason. From the very beginning, the first season ends with Robyn and I having a wedding and going on a honeymoon. While I'm on my honeymoon, that sacred loneliness that my first 3 wives had was invited out by our experience being public, where they had always had other women they associated with that we kind of complained to each other. They never had a public venue to say, I'm jealous that he's gone on a honeymoon. While my 4th wife and I were gone on a honeymoon that my other wives all got, they criticized that and I think established, I don't even know, this is just from my perspective. I don't know how this happened, but a criticism of her And I think for years, she may have been a heel of the show. Absolutely the kindest woman, little shy, with boundaries. But I think trash talking from other people, the people who used to sing my praises, and trash talking from these same people towards my fourth wife, kind of did some damage. And the public, like both of you should go back, just watch every episode from the beginning to the end. And then the two of you just tell me, do you see anything? I want to know, do you see anything wrong with Robyn? Because I trust you guys enough to let you do it. I'm not listening to anybody else because I'm loyal to her as she is loyal to me. But it's simple as that. Sorry for the long answer. To just make it short, I'll put it in a nutshell now. RFM. We were backing each other, and now we're not. And now it's just a big trash talk. He did this, this, and this, and this. He changed. He did whatever. Sure, I changed. Yeah, a lot has happened. And so I said, the fool blames everybody else, and the wise man blames himself, and the stoic doesn't lay blame. I wish there was just more stoicism and just say, this is just the way it ended, or the way it worked out.
Would you ever
blame?
Would you ever take another? I'm going to ask. Yeah. Would you ever take another
spoiler,
polygamous one?
Spoiler.
That's it.
Nope. Spoiler.
You would
spoiler.
never.
I'm not talking about it.
Okay.
I'm not talking about it. That's a spoiler.
All right. Maybe he gets married again. Maybe he doesn't. Folks turn into
maybe
that's what everybody wants to know.
He's at 18 or 19. Yeah.
Froggy went a courting and he did right. I'm sorry. I'm being kind of piggish.
No, that's all right.
No,
I appreciate.
I'm not ready to discuss that here because
totally.
That's something I'm giving to I'm saving that for the brand TLC.
Yeah, no, totally understand.
Well,
that.
say something for us. So as far as Joseph Smith goes, does your ambivalence about Section 132 extend to the first vision?
Yeah, same story. I wasn't there. I can't say it didn't happen. I love the story. Dang it. It's really cool. It's inspiring, but maybe it really happened, and maybe he's just not as interesting as J.R.R. Tolkien, but has a very similar story. I can't tell you. And I say that, this is not very invested. I know it's not fair for me to do that, but I'm going through my life holding on to things that were special when I was young, and I still pray to a heavenly Father. And some people are going to think that's BS. I don't care about the criticism, because there is either a God or right here, I am God. And pretty crappy God right here. But Neville Goddard? Or there was this philosopher who said all the scriptures were all about the soul of mankind, and that your frontal lobe was the God part of the thinking mind that allowed you to say, to do benevolent and wonderful things, and to create in your mind things that you would actually manifest in life. So somewhere along the line, I'm a real believer, but it's really hard to say what the truth is when you weren't there. We live by faith. Well, I can't tell you. I've never met the Messiah, the Savior either, but I'm still going to pray in his name, because I just don't know any other way than to move forward with a Father in heaven and Jesus.
Well, trust me, meeting the Savior is a great experience.
Thanks.
Also, there are some people.
RFM, have you received your second anointing? You're calling.
I'm sorry. I've been instructed that I cannot talk about my most sacred experiences, Mr. Reel.
An angel with a drawn sword was over your head. And how many wives are you going to have now? See,
there are some people, by the way, who would say that if there is a God that actually exists, he's a pretty crappy God.
I'll be fair here, that the cults always seem to have some guy who thinks that he needs more than one wife. But nature says that too. So I'm not going to sit and criticize it.
I wanted to ask, so I'm not a fan of religious polygamy. I'm not a fan of, because I think when you say, hey, here's the plan of salvation, here's how you get back to heaven, and it requires that polygamy happens.
Seems like the choice is out. Yeah, it takes away the choice.
Yeah, and it becomes almost always patriarchy, and it almost always has trauma being ready to be given to the women, namely, but also the men, but the women, namely.
Dude. So this is one of the places where I kind of doubt. If you went to a bunch of men in a priesthood meeting or something and said, "Hey, boys, we need all of you to have 3 wives." Some of these guys, because their Christian disposition, is going to go, "No, rant and rave, horror, terror, this is terrible." And then you'll have half the guys go, "Sign me up." You have to browbeat a woman into believing that, I think, unless she's looking at this guy that she's digging on and she's like, "Yeah, he's already married, but I'd like to marry him too." And that's called hypergamy. So you have Joseph Smith, who's basically in the time, 1840. He's a freaking rock star. He's loved by many and he's hated by some. Okay. But he's a rock star, man. Where he goes, people are just, women are fainting, these kind of things. Mike Ben Long, those long eyelashes, I have no idea. So when he dies and there's rumors of polygamy, oh yeah, you got about a bunch of 14-year-olds going to raise their hand and say, because 14-year-olds, I was a 14-year-old once and I had all these girlfriends that I wanted to like me who were digging on Scott Baio. You know what I'm saying? Or whoever the heartthrob was. I mean, they're like, I was nothing. I was chump. I liked these 14-year-old girls. They all liked some rock star. Okay. So you got these 14-year-old girls who are saying, "I was married to Joseph Smith." And I'm like going, yeah, nobody knows what the true story is here. Okay. And that's where I'm at. Is like, I don't know that it didn't happen. I don't know that it did. I got a lot of inspiration my whole life from the Book of Mormon. I literally think that it's genius. Boring, but genius. And this is why. Because there's so many factors in it, even in Joseph Smith's life. You can go back, you can time it with, if you go to a Torah, a Jewish calendar, and you can find Joseph Smith's birthday is literally of 1805, is literally the day where Hasidic Jews, I'm not really sure, would light the candle on the menorah, the seventh candle. The seventh heavenly messenger's birthday was on December 23rd of 1805. I'm like,
so you're saying that
they
were celebrating Hanukkah then?
Yes, they were lighting the candles of Hanukkah, and Hanukkah. It's actually, Hanukkah is a name off. It's the Feast of Dedication is what it is. They have the 7 candles, and they represent this 7 angelic eras. And the last candle gets lit on Joseph Smith's birthday. Coincidence? I don't know. And here's his whole life has these kind of weird coinky dinks, and it's like, it used to be very faith promoting for me, but then I'm like going, but guy was a rock star and he liked other men's wives. Or is that true? I don't know. So I wasn't there. I don't know. And anymore, I had so much inspiration from the Book of Mormon and the Doctrine and Covenants and things that just worked for me. Was it plagiarized? I don't know. I've listened to, I've been on, what's the other podcast, your competition
we don't mention them here.
On? Come on.
I don't know.
Mormon stories? John DeLynn?
John DeLynn, yeah.
Yeah.
And frankly, one of my best friends from high school was his mission companion.
Oh, really? Dish.
Yeah. Well, this friend of mine has nothing but good to say about John DeLynn. So I don't know. It's not fair for me to not invest in where you guys are following here. But I'm not ready to throw baby out or bathwater out. I'm not willing to be subject to the whims of some man. And if I roll that back, like I'm not going to follow my prophet. Hell no. I ain't following the Mormon prophet either. Hell no. Is that my rebellious nature? Probably. But if I roll that back, there's only one church leader, 2. Ezra Taft Benson in the Mormon church and our prophet in my church, Owen Allred, were my 2 favorite prophets. Owen Allred never claimed to be one. He was just the head of our church. If I keep rolling that back, criticizing like I would never be subject to what these guys were subjecting their people to, I wouldn't have been willing with this attitude that I've got now to have been subject to Brigham Young or to Joseph Smith. So I wouldn't have lasted long in the church ever.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying it was wrong.
I didn't get the question out. I want to say this question again, because I was saying I'm against religious polygamy. I think it's always unhealthy when you pressure people into relationships and their salvation's on the line. That said, there is plenty of polygamy out in the world, and I don't have any problem with multiple women or multiple men getting together with a woman or man and deciding they want to cohabitate and have a group relationship. That's none of my business. But I do want to ask you, for anybody out there who thinks about polygamy, they want to do that. Again, not the religious stuff, but just polygamy in general. Any advice you have for people entering a polygamous relationship? Like, because there is a subgroup of people who look for or do that. And I'm just curious, knowing all the experience that you have, if you would have any advice for someone having that sort of a relationship, or would you say, like, don't do it? It's not going to go well generally.
I'll quote some, I think it's Chinese scripture, Sun Tzu. Know yourself, know your spouse. If you don't know each other, you're screwed.
Yeah.
So know what you're getting into. And that's very difficult, but you got to know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
I'm not going to disparage plural marriage. My experience was challenging in it and rewarding in it. So I'm not going to sit here and I want to disparage it because I want to blame plural marriage for my failures, not me for my failures, but it is what happened. And there are successful polygamists who go to their grave with a family or wives that love them. I struggle to believe that there's a lot of real deep happiness in plural marriage. But let's move wider, Bill. No, I'm not a fan of a religion that says this is required of you or you don't get to heaven or however it is. I'm bothered by that because I think that men were going, yeah, sign me up. Whereas the women were being told that they wouldn't make it if they didn't do it. That's not fair. But I will say in plural marriage where people are choosing to be in it and they're wise about how they do it, then maybe it's a blessing to them because there are those places where a woman's like, I love my husband and I love my best friend. And her best friend says, I love that woman's husband. And that polygamy, or not polygamy, that I forgot the word again. Sorry, boys.
Polyandry?
No.
Hypergamy.
Hypergamy. Yeah,
Hypergamy.
That's going to happen. You get a guy who's high performance, great guy, treats his wife like a queen. There are going to be other women who want to be treated by that guy that way. And I kind of feel like that's how my family came together, at least a little bit, where I had a couple of wives that came into the family saying, I like what's going on here. I want to be part of it.
Yeah. I want to ask a couple of questions here about your religious faith. And you seem to have indicated that you aren't convinced that Joseph Smith was married to girls, underage, under the age of 18.
Let's just say I catch the vomit in the back of my throat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that he didn't or that he did, but I think he did.
Yeah.
Let's do that. I got a problem.
Totally. That's the question I want to ask. So let's assume for a moment that he did. And I think the evidence is, again, I know there's a subgroup of people who would fight up against this conclusion, and they've got their reasons and their data points and their quotes that they use. But far and wide, the overwhelming evidence is that Joseph Smith not only practiced polygamy, but that he practiced polyandry, which RFM mentioned, which is marrying the wives of other men, but also that he had numerous wives who were girls, underage girls under the age of 18. And let's just assume for a moment that's true. So a friend of our program, a follower of our program, said, ask Kody this question. And so I'm just going to read it. He said, I appreciate that you are not hiding, concealing, and lying about your polygamy the way Joseph Smith did, nor are you taking child brides or marrying other guys' wives as he did. But having learned the controversial aspects of Joseph Smith's polygamy, how do you view Joseph Smith at this point, knowing those data points are most likely true?
I don't like being a Mormon apologist. And it really requires sort of a spiritual rejection and an embracing of only the intellectual to say he was basically self-aggrandizing, or I have to actually say it looks like self-aggrandizement. Now, I have friends, Mormon apologists, who say Joseph restored the gospel and he brought the Book of Mormon forth, and then fell like King David, fell for the women. And women being hypergamous, Joseph Smith was the coolest guy in town. They were probably throwing themselves at him. And okay, not saying that it was justified. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they were easy prey. And if he was being a predator, that's pretty sick.
Thanks
and
for
the
clarifying
judgment
that.
lies. Yeah, the judgment lies on whether there's some way that maybe God ordained it in the sense that, hey, in Ireland at the same time, in Ireland, you get some 30-year-old rich guy who couldn't get his own woman. Her parents would give her to him and say, yeah, marry him. But Joseph Smith was doing this stuff. If he was doing this stuff, he was doing it in secret, nefariously. And when I see a 14-year-old girl, I see a child. Maybe sometimes they have the woman's body, but they're a child. And I'm like, as a dad, it's like, I'm not doubling down on this. Just listen to what I'm saying. If the wrong dad had that happen, and when I said wrong dad, I mean maybe the right dad. He's got a rifle at Carthage jail. Okay? And he's looking to shoot somebody. Okay? He didn't have the faith. He didn't have the revelation. He didn't have God tell him that his daughter was supposed to marry this guy. And there were plenty of guys. Rough Stone Rolling talks about this, where William Law's son was dating a girl or trying to chase a girl or was interested in a girl, got his heart broke because Joseph Smith stepped in front of him and took that girl to be his wife.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only that those acts happened. It's that the history indicates that Joseph used a lot of heavy-handedness, manipulation, grooming techniques, spiritual threats, time restraints on how quick people had to make decisions. And it looks like the way that predators in the modern moment groom and prey on children.
It's pretty creepy stuff. I'll be really honest with you. It's creepy. And I don't want to sit here and invest in it because I wasn't there and I don't know for sure. The history indicates, but I know for a fact that history lies. And so I'm a conspiracy theorist. So I don't believe the histories that I read sometimes. And you've got me from years of indoctrination about this, so I'm not willing to throw it out. But all indicates, listen, I'll give you guys the win on this. If I was in an argument, I can't support it. And it's left me in a place where the last time I actually tried to read the Book of Mormon, I just couldn't read it. Yeah. And what I'm saying is I'm not trying to avoid your question.
Yeah, I get it.
I don't want to invest in the answer because it deletes. If where you're going, Bill, is to say Joseph Smith was a fraud and a crook, it deletes so much of my past. And what I want to say is, just like that bad marriage that ended, I'm still glad it happened because all the fruit that I got from it with my children and my experience. So I'm not saying that Joseph Smith wasn't a crook. If you want to say he was, I'll say, well, he might have been. You know, that's where I'm at. It's like I delete my past and I invalidate the faith of my dearest friends when I agree with you. So I'm not trying to be mealy mouthed here. I'm saying for me to invest in what you're saying is truth is detrimental to my psyche in some ways. And maybe the time comes where I finally just go, what a joke. And I'm, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm that close to it, but I don't want to do it here publicly. Thank you.
Totally get it. Totally understand. I wanted to ask you, in RFM, jump in if you've got anything. I'm happy to.
Okay, I was going to ask you,
please.
I mean, I think you summed it up really well in what you said at the end there, Kody, but why is it that you're having trouble reading the Book of Mormon? If you're like me, you've read it like 20 times plus in the course of your life. It's like Donny Osmond said, it's his favorite book. I felt the same way about the Book of Mormon for decades, and I pretty much know it still backward and forward. Why would that be difficult for you to read? That's the first part of the compound question. And the second part is, do you have the same problem reading the Bible? And if not, why not?
The Bible contextually is a literary work common in the entire world, most of the entire world. Same kind of stories go along with the Book of Mormon, a little less creepy stuff, but maybe, I'm sorry, I take that back. What I meant to say was similar. There's a lot of people who spend a lot of time discrediting the Bible, but what I love about it is it still tells a story and a history, and the stories, whether true or not, are stories with moral value in the end. The Book of Mormon's the same way, but I struggle with it for exactly what Bill was just discussing with me. The Book of Mormon is like Leviticus. It's so much of it is so boring, you know, and like you said, read it many times. Book of Mormon and the Bible gave me a real history in my faith, kind of like a building block. But my real connection to God and prayer came from more almost New Age type of books, where people would teach mantras about how to manifest or teach mantras about connecting with God. Joseph Smith said that the Book of Mormon was the most perfect book, and by people living by its principles, and most of its principles are pretty decent. But the poison in my gut from the stories that I've heard for the past 15 years about Joseph Smith have really made it really hard for me to read the Book of Mormon. And I don't believe that Joseph Smith restored the church and translated the Book of Mormon only to fall to polygamy. I'm not sure that everything about what his experience wasn't a fraud. I just don't know, because I wasn't there, and I don't want to. It's almost like, listen, it won't matter if I put the blinder up on this one, because it doesn't. Well, I guess if you're a Mormon, you're going to think that it has everything to do with my eternal fate. Faith in Jesus Christ is what Christianity and even Mormon purport, not faith in Joseph Smith or even faith in the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon's design was to be a second witness to Jesus Christ. And if maybe I just don't need the witness, I just found it very difficult to read again.
Yeah. There are several fundamentalist groups out there that do polygamy. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts, having lived it, having gotten the teachings on polygamy, having understood why in your system God commanded it. Again, there's a whole host of breakoffs of Mormonism that do it. I'm curious what your thoughts are on what fundamentalist Mormonism could do to better ensure healthier, happier polygamous families, because I would like it to end. I'd like all these groups to just stop it. But the reality is they're going to be doing polygamy forever. So that's not really an option. But what maybe is an option is to convince the leaders of these systems that the way they do things is really unhealthy and maybe there's a better way to do it. I'm curious if, just from your experience, if you have any thoughts on how these systems could better operate in that doctrine.
These systems are all empowering the men at the top. It's a bunch of BS. It's about them having power and control over their people. So they're assigning marriages, and in order to keep their daughters virgins, they want them to marry when they're young. And they have a whole philosophy that I struggle with because it's control and power, and it's not the freedom of choice that people actually need. And there's pressure. I don't know how you unwind that. I think that, let me start with this because I'm confused on how I would answer it, but let me start with this. There came a point in my life when none of my wives wished any of our daughters into plural marriage. We basically came to a point as a family, kind of not even discussing it, just all of us kind of came to this point where we were like, I don't want my daughter entering into plural marriage. That's a tell. So let's go back to this question that you've got. How could they correct the mess they're in? Well, move into this century. What's the average marrying age now? Stop trying to marry people off when they're 19 and 20.
Amen. Yeah, make it 25, 30 before someone can make that kind of decision.
Well, they're looking for babies and you have a window. Okay,
easy to manipulate. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Like, okay, listen. Now, here's the interesting thing in the church, and you can check these statistics, but these are statistics somebody told me. When plural marriage was accepted and normal in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the average woman would have 5 children. After that, for many years into the 60s and 70s, I think the average woman had 8 children. 8 children. I think it was a lot easier on those women to have 5, and so what does a government want so they can print more money? More population. What does a church want so they can get more tithing? More population.
Yeah.
So they're perpetuating because, a birthing window for most women is, like, let's let them at least be adults. So we got 20 to 40. You got 20 years. They're trying to warm bodies are not machines that can only make money. A famous song, a favorite band of mine, Live. Well, good women are not machines that can only make babies. Yeah. And in these cultures, their dispositions are minimized. Now, I love motherhood. I love women who want to have children, and I've had a lot of children. And I'll be honest with you, if I would have married in monogamy, I would have wanted to have 8 or 10 kids with one woman. And the average in my family is less than 5 per wife. Not necessarily by choice. It would have been, the average would have ended up probably being, would have probably been, but I had 2 wives who chose to end at 6 and they didn't feel any pressure to have any more after that. So these churches need tithing, they need people, they need brains to brainwash, and so none of them would listen to me. I'm the failed polygamist who put egg all over their face. Now, but my advice would be to let them have a happy life. So 1, allow them to choose who they marry, both men and women, because in some of the sects, the women get to choose who they marry and the men don't. Other sects, like the men get to stack them up, and depending on if you're kissing the behind of the prophet enough, you're going to end up with a lot of wives. Ridiculous. Yeah. Figure a number that works. You know, like what is the Quran will only allow 5 wives, or is it 3? I don't even know. But holy cow, you know, 10, 12 wives? Give me a break. Is that a life for a woman to have? I mean, I had 4 wives and it was hard for them. I think my wives would have been, you know, if my family would have been smaller, it would have been maybe easier. But the more wives you have, the more likely your failure rate. And that's just statistically out of my own church. They say, you know, once you get more than 3 wives, the ratio of failure exponentially higher. But I have people I know who are still successful in plural marriage, even with more wives, you know, with 5 or more wives.
Yeah.
So I like me, it's all about choice. And it's really like back off with the pressure. Don't make plural marriage the end all be all. But I think that's coming from the man. You know, you go into a church that allows more than 1 wife, it invites a certain kind of guy, very possibly. I'm not really sure. But see, it was my mom who bore her testimony of plural marriage to me and read me Section 132 when I was 14 that made me go, yeah, I'm going to live plural marriage. It was easy for me to sign up, though. I was a guy. She didn't have to pound that into my head. I bought with 1 testimony.
And a 14-year-old guy to boot.
Yeah. And well, I believed, you know, I believed what I was reading, you know, and I believed my mother. Interesting that it was my mother perpetuating plural marriage, but and she was a real believer all the days of her life, you know. So but these sects, okay, choice, let a little, get some college degree, you know. If you want people who are going to be successful in plural marriage, give them a chance to leave the culture. Because, you know, like let them go to college and get a degree and figure out a way to support themselves. If a guy has 4 wives, he better have really, really smart wives who are industrious and educated. Otherwise, he's going to be just squalor and poverty. It's a tough place. And but it's hard for me to believe that it's not really about the self-aggrandizement of the leaders in all of these sects. They're worn out. These leaders are worn out. They're tired. They're sort of sick of it. But yet and I don't think they believe it. None of them get revelation. Come on, liar.
Yeah.
You know, they're at best they're inspired. And but see, that's my criticisms coming from a place where I've been so far removed from it. I don't even know. I just don't believe their BS. You tell me that God's telling you something for me? No. God will tell me. I'll go talk to him.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I don't need an intermediary. I'm right here if he wants to speak to me.
I'll allow if it's true, and I'm still an if person. I've got faith, but I don't know because I've never met Jesus. But I'll let him be the intermediary because I believe in that. But I'm not going to let Joseph Smith be my intermediary. What a messed up life. I'm not going to let any of these other leaders do it either. And so it's like the only way I think that these cultures are not going to survive without the forms of conviction that they are using. They're just not going to survive unless they're just pounded into their heads. And so that's what they're going to do. And by having that pounded into your head as a kid, you're just going to lose. You're going to buy it because it's pounded into your head, or you're kind of going to go, you know what? I'd like a normal life.
Yeah, totally.
But I don't know the answers because I've had way too much experience to feel like I should be the one being asked, but I'm giving you just my personal opinion. And everybody, every man, woman, and adult child has to choose for themselves what their path will be that they pursue.
Phone bank is full, RFM. I wanted to check in with you and see if you had anything else you wanted to ask. Otherwise, we'll go to the last segment of the show where we take live calls. Again, anybody in that phone bank, the questions need to be respectful. We're excited to have you on the show, but we really are trying to have a respectful, cordial interview and allow Kody to share who he is. And I just want to kind of lay that out to begin with.
If it's
so
full,
RFM,
If it's full and we only have a few more minutes, if there's a question that I really don't know the answer to or can't really conjure up a question,
there's three phone
let's
calls,
move on.
and so we'll be good.
Okay.
All
right.
So keep it clean, folks.
Yeah, please.
That's actually, I have no further questions, Your Honor. We can go straight to the phone lines.
Sweet. Then we'll take the first call here. Caller, are you there? Oop, give me 1 second. It's just clicking. We've got like an hourglass here. There we go. Caller, are you there? Oop, let's try something here. Let's try that. I think I got
testing.
Look at that. What's the name, caller?
Hi, Allison. How are you guys?
Allison, awesome. Glad to have you on Mormonism Live with Radio Free Mormon and myself, Bill Reel, and our guest, Kody Brown.
Hi.
What would you like to share?
Hi, gentlemen.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, Kody. Listen, we have a lot of the same friends. It's not really a small world, or maybe it is. I'm a religious studies sociologist. I've studied fundamental Mormonism for 22 years. I simply wanted to call and thank you as someone has a heart for fundamentalist and Mormon fundamentalists. And this is a monumental interview of vulnerability from much less someone that's like a quasi, fundamentalist. I don't know, but your vulnerability and your humility is appreciated. That's all I will say. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. You guys have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Allison.
Thank you for the call. How does that make you feel, Kody?
Well, it's the first time I've been called humble. Thank you.
I think it is risky, right? You know, to sit here and not know what questions we're going to ask, have no idea where the conversation's going to go. So there is a degree, certainly, of vulnerability, and we appreciate that.
Well, you guys are both, I think, both non-antagonistic ex-Mormons, and Bill and I are friends. So anyway, go ahead. Sorry,
we've never seen Bill riled.
I can be antagonistic a little bit.
I heard you two both poking a little bit.
Yeah, we do a little bit of that, but I also, I want to completely respect the fact that you've given us an evening of your time, and I told you in the beginning, this wasn't going to be a game of gotcha or trying to corner you. I really wanted to give you a chance to talk about the TV show, to talk about living polygamy, and to talk about your religious faith. And so I think we did that. All right. Caller, you are on. What is the name? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, you're on the show. What's the name, caller?
My name is Kelly.
Oh, yes.
Kelp?
I was just wondering, you explained in the last episode how you thought a wife was disloyal if she kept her from her husband, but Robyn does the same thing from her first husband. How do you explain that difference?
Robyn never did that. He had access to them all the time.
Her husband, he's dying of cancer. Do her kids know that?
Her kids have chosen. Well, let's go this direction. This is one I'm going to have to pass on, guys, because this is about somebody else and somebody else's life. I'm not interested in answering that question. Thank you.
No worries. I'll drop the call.
Thank you.
Yeah, no sweat. All right. And this will be the last call we've got. We usually take 3 calls, and this will be the 3rd one. Caller, you're on the air. What's
Hello?
the name?
Hi, is it me?
Yep, it's you. What's the name?
My name is awesome. My name is Amy L, and I'm calling from California.
Awesome.
And I wanted to ask Kody, do you still believe in eternal marriage and the covenant that you made, with all 4 of your wives? Do you expect to be reunited with any of your now ex-wives on earth in the afterlife?
No. I'm not saying I don't believe in eternal marriage, but I think that's on the merits of the marriage and how God judges it. I think the covenant of eternal marriage is something leadership, maybe Joseph Smith, they made up this stuff. And the reason that they made it up was because they wanted to give power of people over other people in a relationship. By the way, thank you for the question, Amy. But I totally believe that it's a control issue, and it's an issue of they introduced plural marriage at the same time they introduced eternal marriage. And what that did is that gave man the opportunity to have more than one wife, while the wife had the promise of having her husband indefinitely, because simply of the psychology of the two different sexes and what they look for in these relationships. So I'm not saying that I don't believe in eternal marriage, but I think that's on the merits of the marriage. And if you didn't have your stuff together or didn't like each other in this life, you're not together in the next life. And I argue that point with Robyn's other mother all the time, because she wants that marriage. She wants to own that man in the next life. And I feel bad for him because I'd be running from her. Hopefully she's not listening. Oh wait, God, can you guys edit that out? There's people that know that.
Let me say this, which if I hear you correctly, what I hear you saying is that it's not predicated on a ritual taking place. It's not predicated on an ordinance or priesthood power. Rather, you're taking more of like the general Christian view, maybe, that if there is anything, if you have any relationship in the life hereafter, it's going to be because all parties wanted that relationship and they loved so strongly that they wish that continued throughout beyond
Bill,
this life.
I'm not saying, Bill, that the ritual isn't necessary. I'm saying that the love in the marriage is necessary. I think that a loveless marriage, for people who are stuck in it because of a covenant. Now, covenant is just a contract, okay? And any business contract I go into can be exited or can be broken if one party or the other doesn't abide by what is there. But it can also be exited. Bill, if you and I have a business together, you and I can agree to dissolve the agreement, the contract. And that's all a covenant is a contract that you're making with God. And if you and your wife do not love each other with an eternal nature, then why would God hold you in that eternal prison? So I'm not a believer in eternal marriage where the parties aren't both willing to make that work or happy to have that experience. So personally, if I'm not in a good marriage with an ex-wife or something like that, or we don't make amends in this life somehow or something, no, I don't expect it to be eternal. And I'm still going on faith that we just, like, I'm being real here. I hope in a hereafter. I don't know what it's like. I hope in a hereafter, possibly a resurrection, but it might just be a dirt nap.
Yeah.
If that's the case, it's just stuff to control humankind while we're here on earth. And I don't like that. Yeah. I want my freedom to determine if we're going to stay together, and I want her to be free to choose. Now, I might be mad about how it went, but if she's not wanting to be with me, I'm not putting her in that prison.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
Yeah. I was watching a late night TV show. I can't remember what it was, but Keanu Reeves was the guest, and the host of the show said, Keanu, tell us about what you know to happen when we die. And the crowd sort of laughed, because who's Keanu Reeves to tell us anything about the hereafter? But his answer was beautiful, which is, he said, I know that the people who love us will miss us. And the added thing to that is, I would like to think that the people I love and who love me back would want to be with me more after this life is over. And so I think that hope is something that a lot of us have. And anyway, I appreciate it. RFM, any closing comments from you? Otherwise we can start.
I will say that your last comments there, Kody, reminded me of something that President Oak said in this most recent general conference. It hasn't gotten a lot of play yet, and I'm not sure I mentioned it a lot in my review of conference. But even in this LDS church, the Brighamite church, or Joseph, whatever you want to call it, the Brighamite church, you know what I'm talking about.
The modern LDS church.
Yeah, the real church.
You go.
One and only true and
the
living
ones who
church.
have the corporation.
Right, the one that Dallin Oaks is a president in. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
No, at the end of
the
his
one that has
talk,
the corporate claim to be in the real church.
it's the only true and living
Owns the
corporation
trademarks
of God upon the face of the earth. That's what it is.
Stop! I gotta go to the bathroom. You're gonna make me.
Really? Okay, do you have to go to the bathroom right now? Because I'm almost done. No, let me quote him, okay?
No, just
because
don't make
even
me
in
laugh.
this church that has, the what do you call it? The sealing power, and that's the big thing. And they got the keys, and they'll talk about it every conference to make sure the audience doesn't forget that they're the ones with the keys and nobody else. He appends in almost the strange way. It doesn't really have anything to do with anything else he said, but he wants to make sure that even in this church that has the sealing power, and you have to be sealed, you have to be married in the temple for time and eternity to reach the highest, degree of glory in celestial kingdom. We all know how that goes. And yet, probably responsive to pressures or comments from a lot of members of the church, he says this at the end. He says, "We have a loving heavenly Father who will see that we receive every blessing and every advantage that our own desires and choices allow." Now get this. We also know that he will force no one into a sealing relationship against his or her will. The blessings of a sealed relationship are assured for all who keep their covenants, but never by forcing a sealed relationship on another person who is unworthy or unwilling. And then he closes with this testimony.
Now, don't like the unworthy or unwilling, because no, was that just the inclusion or was that the caveat?
It's like anybody who's these sealed relationships, i.e. your marriages, for crying out loud, right?
Yeah.
Your marriages is what he's talking about. It's like you have to get married in the temple by the right priesthood authority with the right keys in order to make it to the top of the celestial kingdom. But it's like he's allowing that once you die and the resurrection happens, it's going to be a free-for-all.
By the way, isn't this the same church that requires you to write the first presidency a letter and to request a temple cancellation, and they have the ability to say no?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, just wanted to check. Great.
It was a strange thing, and I know that he's saying that because he's getting pressures, but it sounds like there's a lot of people out there who aren't really satisfied with the idea of spending forever with their current spouse and want to maybe do an upgrade in the resurrection.
Well, polygamy and hypergamy, that's what my church would teach. They would agree with him, because we're going to take these women who don't like their husband and allow them to have the husband of their choice. And, in the history of my own family, I had Brigham Young release one of Lorenzo Dow Young's wives from him and sealed her to Joseph Smith.
And Dallin Oaks says these things, and I don't think he ever thinks like one step ahead of what he's saying, because obviously, if that is the case, President Oaks, then you're going to have the possibility and indeed the eventuality of having men stripped of their wife, which makes them not eligible now for the celestial kingdom. They can't be exalted now because they don't have their wife, and it's all because their wife really didn't like him that much. And is this the way heaven's run?
It goes against everything that's written in the Old Testament. It's the Old Testament. I'm sorry to say this, and I don't mean to be disparaging to women in any way, but the Old Testament was very much about property rights, and you couldn't strip a man of his wife in the Old Testament. And finally, Moses authorizes a writ of a divorcement. Mm-hmm. And Jesus says later on, divorce is because of the hardness of your heart. And I get that. I get that hardness of your heart. And if you were truly righteous, we wouldn't have divorce. If we were truly righteous, we wouldn't force people into marriages. If we were truly righteous, we would give counseling, premarital counseling. If we were truly righteous, we wouldn't force people to stay married to somebody who was a crook just because they were sealed.
And yet the problem with this theory, I think, is that none of us are truly righteous.
Yeah.
Hence the bills of divorcement.
I believe that in the end, either we make choices and we find people. Here's the thing: I have a real belief that unrequited love is some other disconnect from an energetic experience. If she doesn't want to be married to you, dude, you're an idiot. If you want,
you're an
to
idiot
force
for pursuing her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. She like Lorenzo Dow Young's own wife wanted a release, said she wasn't happy, and Brigham Young sold her to Joseph Smith. Released her and sold her to Joseph Smith. And the reason I know this story is because Lorenzo Dow Young is one of my great-great-grandfathers.
Yes. He was the founder
Weird.
of Dow Chemicals, I think.
No, he wasn't.
Oh, I said I think.
Allegedly.
So, Radio Free Mormon, your picture, your iconic picture, not you now, but your iconic picture looks like a Mormon stake president.
Really? I look that well off, do I?
Yeah. You're nice and clean shaven, the perfectly colored hair. A nice.
And it's funny that what made you think of
tie.
it was when I mentioned Dow Chemicals, i.e. hugely successful and lots of money. And then you say, you look like a state president.
I'm not an heir to that. So anyway, it's been great, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Kody. I will let Bill finish it out, but I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show, being vulnerable, telling us like it is for you right now at this point in your life.
Yeah, thank you.
I told one story, Bill, that I don't know if you talk about editing here, but I was I crossed a line. I was a little too vulnerable, and it was about other people's lives, not about mine. If you've got a way to get that out,
I will try to do that. This is a live show, but
it looks like only 1,700 people have seen it.
Yeah.
Because what it is I was talking about other people's lives with my opinion, and it's not my life. So I was talking with my opinion.
Okay, so that we can find it, so Bill can find it to take it out. Could you repeat what it is you said?
No, let's just there. Let me RFM stir in the pot. All right, so folks, just a quick little note. We do a live show every Wednesday, 6:20 p.m. Mountain Time, Mormonism Live. We dive into the history. We dive into current events. We try to talk about all things Mormonism. We would really love it if you enjoy Mormonism and you want to partake in these conversations. Please like this video. Leave your comment down below if you haven't already in the live chat, and please subscribe. Check us out every Wednesday at 6:20 p.m. Kody, thank you very much for your time tonight. I deeply appreciate. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to have it with us.
I would like to say one thing. I apologize if I've offended anybody in their faith and their belief. That is not my intention. I'm simply talking from the meanderings of my own experience.
Yeah. Appreciate it, my friend. Have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you guys all next week.
Mormonism Live. Better than touching your own little factory.